What is up, boys? Ron from Fantasy Flow. Welcome back to the channel. Week 9's in the books, and we got Week 10 approaching. The NFL trade deadline has just passed. Not too much movement, to be honest. Like unless you're excited about dudes like Khalil Herbert or motherfucking Jonathan Mingo. But me personally, not a lot of movement. Not too much happened. So that doesn't mean that we can't make our fantasy teams better, right? This is the time when you can make that final push. Try to grab players that are performing poorly, or sell players that are performing really well, called sell high candidates. In the middle of making this video, I was also going to do like sell high candidates, but then I realized like those videos never perform well, bro. I get dislikes, people comment, tell me that I'm gay. It's like people react as if you just told them that like somebody's fucking their wife or their girlfriend. Like I don't, they get so defensive, they lose their minds. They think that you're dumb and that you don't know anything about fantasy. So I figured, fuck it, dude. I'm not going to make a sell high list. I do have a couple names that I want to share with you guys, but before I hop into them, if you like this video, if you get value from it, I'd really appreciate a like and a subscribe. If you're new here, if you want to catch more of my videos, that's just the best way to show support for the channel. And we're gonna hop into this video, bro. I'm gonna share with you my sell high candidates, and the first one's Jaxon Smith-Njigba. This one's probably on most people's lists, but basically the thesis or the reason for it is pretty simple. He's been actually pretty decent most of the season. Like the problem with Jaxon Smith up until this week is that he's super boom bust, right? Like week 1 doesn't do much. Week 2 goes 17 fantasy points. He gets 16 targets in that game. He's looking like the Cooper Cup in that Cooper Cup role, which is what Seattle was calling him. And then a couple weeks with not much, like pretty much other than week 5 where he scored 11 fantasy points, he was in single digits every week until obviously against the Rams, he pops the fuck off. Of course, I was playing against him, right? In like my main league, very competitive league. And yeah, he ends up popping off in week 9. Now, the reason that he's a sell high is just because DK Metcalf wasn't there, right? Like once DK Metcalf is back, which it looks like it might be this week, we expect Jaxon to revert back to his slot role, which really caps his upside. He's not going to get the downfield stuff. The air yardage was insane in that game against the Rams. So if you could sell him for like top 15 value, you can get like a top 15 guy in return. Like for example, this is just a type of trade that I would do. If you could trade Jaxon Smith today for like a guy like Devontae Smith or even like DK Metcalf, I would really consider doing it. You might even be able to get a piece with it in return. This is a tweet from Jacob Gibbs, who's the actual GOAT. He led all players to 227 air yards in week 9. That's not going to hold up. His highest 2023 total was 119 air yards, only which was his only rookie game with more than 70. So this was like really an anomaly type game. He pops off. He looked really good. He looks like he could be an alpha wide receiver, but I just don't think they're going to give him that role moving forward. And then he also has the bye week, right? So if you can flip him now before you have to eat that bye, that's what I would probably like to do. Zay Flowers is another sell high for obvious reasons. He's actually been pretty good since like week 5. He's actually been like a stud or a dud, right? So in week 7, only gets 3 fantasy points. Week 4, 1.5 fantasy points. So he really kind of hurts you when he doesn't perform well. And it's really just down to game script for the Ravens. Like they don't need to pass the ball in a lot of games where they're just dominating and it's just the Derrick Henry show. So as I mentioned, the last 5 weeks, 15 or more fantasy points in 4 of them. So that's really good. Although touchdowns have been pretty rare, he only has 3 on the season. That's kind of been par for the course for Zay Flowers in his 2 seasons. He just doesn't score a lot of touchdowns. I think honestly, this 27-point game might be his career high. Like first multi-touchdown game, highest yardage game, or one of the higher yardage games. He did have 132 in week 6, but my reason that he's a sell high is just because Deontay Johnson's out on the team, so he's somebody that could take a lot of work from Zay Flowers. If this is his ceiling game, I think with Deontay Johnson, his ceiling is more like an 18, 20-point fantasy game. And if that's somebody that you want to have in your lineup, then fine, you can keep him. He's a nice, consistent option. But I do think Deontay Johnson takes a lot of targets, right? Like, I don't know if we're going to have another 12 target Zay Flowers game. But those are my sell highs. I probably could have found some more, but I was like, fuck, dude, people are just going to roast me anyway. Like, I'm tired of getting called gay by people on this damn platform. And now we go into the buy low players. Pretty simple. Most of them are very like obvious. I mean, buy low, sell high videos are always pretty obvious. It's like dudes that are good but aren't playing well, you buy them, right? Very straightforward. First one is Breece Hall. Now, Breece Hall has been pretty decent on the season. The problem with Breece Hall is that when he does play poorly, he really plays poorly, and it really looks pretty bad. Like in week 4 and 5, two good run defenses, but he only scores 2 and 5 fantasy points respectively. And then has a nice little stretch against Buffalo and Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh one's actually really impressive because Pittsburgh has a really good defense, and he just dominates, right? He does a lot of damage in the air, 6 for 103 in the air, gets into the end zone on really poor yards per carry in that game, but we're happy, right? We're stoked. And then 2 weeks in a row against New England and Houston, two pretty beatable matchups. Doesn't really do much, right? 16 for 80, doesn't get only one catch for 9 yards. And then in week 9, which is the most relevant week, the one that stings the most, only 15 for 74, and then only 2 catches for 11 targets, no touchdowns. Brutal, right? It was the Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson show. We had like two incredible catches by Garrett Wilson, including probably the catch of the decade with that touchdown pass that he caught. And so 2 down weeks. He's still getting the RB1 volume. He's still on I would call them a decent offense. I wouldn't say that the Jets are like a good offense or even a great offense, but touchdown regression should come, right? I think on the season, he only has what, like 1, 2, 3, 4 touchdowns on the season. That's really low, right? In 9 weeks, like that's less than a touchdown every 2 games. So I think that can change going down the stretch. They have some easier matchups, right? Arizona, Indy on deck. And then Seattle, Miami, Jacksonville, beatable. Rams, beatable. Like, it gets really nice for the Breece Hall. Like, his rest of the season schedule is really good. So, I think some positive games. Which I think, honestly, on this slate of games, I think the only one where it's like, you can almost guarantee they'll be losing the game is that Seattle game. And even then, like, Seattle, is liable to sucking dick any given week. So, you can always bet that Breece Hall will be in better game scripts. He's a nice buy low. In terms of value, obviously, I still value him as like a top 6 running back. So if you can like tier up from like a DeAndre Swift plus a piece for a Breece Hall, I would do that. A Brian Robinson plus a piece for him. Chase Brown, if you can like sell him now off of that huge game plus a piece to get Breece Hall. I can already see the comments, people saying, I would never trade Breece Hall for Chase Brown in a piece. Well, then shut the fuck up. Like, okay, then that's not you, but other people would, right? Other owners are way worse at fantasy than you, the fucking god of fantasy. But moving on now, the next one is Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor's actually been really good in most of the games that he's played. The problem is he's always injured, man. He's always getting banged up. And in week 9, tough run defense, only goes 13 for 48, looks pretty bad. 3 for 11 in the air. He does get 5 targets, though, the highest on the season. So better days are ahead for Flacco and the Colts. Just the Flacco offense is much more well-oiled. It's a much better offense. Now, unfortunately, they do have 3 back-to-back tough defenses. However, against Buffalo, that's actually a plus matchup for running backs. So rest of the season, not a bad schedule. He's somebody that I'd really be targeting. I value him as like a top 10 guy, right? The issue is his health, right? But I think in terms of the schedule, in terms of his skill, in terms of how the offense should look better, I do think he's like a top 10 dude. So similar to what I just said about Breece Hall, packaging these like overperforming running back 2s or these high-end running back 2s for a dude like Jonathan Taylor is something that I'd really be trying to do. Obviously, if you can move a guy like Chuba now, that's somebody who I'd be trying to trade. But probably not, right? I don't think people are going to be buying Chuba at this point, knowing that Brooks is back. But yeah, that's it for him. Evan Engram is the next one, and probably the only tight end on my list. But pretty much since Evan Engram has been back in week 6, he's been a stud, right? 13, 6, 11, and 9 fantasy points. Only gets 1 touchdown in week 8. He's going to put it all together. He's going to have a high target and a touchdown game coming up. It's going to happen. You just know it. He's like the first read on the offense. His production without Christian Kirk's actually pretty insane. Going back to 2023, the last 6 games of the season, 19.3 PPR fantasy points per game. Dude is just an absolute target magnet. In week 9 against Philadelphia, he gets 10 targets, only 5 for 45. So I think he has like a wide receiver role, and he's a tight end. So this team is bad. They're going to be in negative game scripts most of the time. He's like a nice safety valve, a nice short yardage target, but he also runs some deeper intermediate routes too. So Evan Engram is just somebody that I love. If you can buy him now, he's yet to have that like huge pop-off game. So I think owners are like willing to part with him, right? If you can sweeten the deal, like if you can flip like a Tucker Kraft plus a piece and then get like Engram plus another piece where he's like included in a 2 for 2, when they get a tight end coming back, someone like Tucker Kraft who's been really good and like out, he's the number 3 tight end on the season. That's something that I'd be doing, right? Like apply that to David Njoku as well, is also like a kind of a buy low. Like take a dude like Kraft who's overperforming and get a dude like Njoku who's just higher on the pecking order in terms of targets, right? I know Kraft runs a lot of routes and he's always out there. He's just not like the number one option is the problem. He doesn't get the targets. So that's it for Evan Engram. Moving on now to Tyreek Hill. This one's super simple. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Tyreek Hill. We know what he's capable of. We know he has like number 1 overall wide receiver ceiling. The fucking Dolphins piss me off, dude. What a stupid organization or a stupid coach team. Fucking hands on sight, dude. If I ever meet Mike McDaniel, man, I'll like that man deserves a slap for how he's been coaching this team. I was a huge Mike McDaniel fan up until this season. I loved his play calling. I love that he comes from that Shanahan tree and he understands like dynamic offense, yards after the catch. He knows how to get his like best players the ball in their hands. And this season, they're like, all right, we are a run team. Fuck throwing the ball down the field. Fuck Jalen Waddle. Fuck, dude. They really made a business decision by saying fuck Jalen Waddle. Like he is such an afterthought now. What a horrible draft pick, dude. I drafted him in the 2nd round. I went Jamar Chase, Waddle, Cup as my first 3 picks. Like I'm looking at that 2nd round pick. If I would have just instead of taking Waddle, taken Ken Walker or Alvin Kamara, I'd be like undefeated right now. My fucking team is so good other than those. But anyway, yeah, Devon Achane owners are very stoked. He's pretty much the entire offense at the moment. But Tyreek Hill should have his days, right, moving forward. They got the Rams, which tend to be kind of blowout-y type games, especially because the Rams just traded away probably their best defensive player, Tre'Davious White. So their defense just got a little bit worse, and I can imagine a blow-up game. And then really easy slate of games, right? Vegas, New England, Green Bay. Gets a little tough with the Jets, and then Houston, San Francisco. But Houston and San Francisco don't really have that secondary you're scared of, but the Jets definitely do. So decent schedule. Let's see if the fucking Dolphins can like open it up a little. Like they turned themselves into a run first team. They're 2-6 because of it. And I know Devon Achane looks great and he's producing, but that's not what made your team so scary and such a formidable foe, right? Like it's not because Devon Achane was producing. It was because Tyreek Hill can take the top off of the defense or in the back, on the back end. Jalen Waddle was popping up for big plays, chunk plays. And at the moment, they're just like, all right, we're going to run the ball on 1st and 2nd down. We're going to throw it to fucking, who's their tight end? Jonnu Smith on 3rd down. Ridiculous, man. But in terms of trade value, basically, there's only a few wide receivers that I have valued over him. So use that to kind of help you. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, St. Brown, and A.J. Brown. Those are the dudes that I would rather have over Tyreek just because of how the offense looks. But you could probably make the argument for any of them, right? You can make the argument for almost all of them, maybe except for Justin Jefferson. Like, he's just too good, and he hasn't even really popped off yet. But yeah, Tyreek Hill is somebody that I really like. Obviously, if you wanted to tier down from one of those guys to a Tyreek Hill, that's also something interesting. Where if you feel really good about Tyreek and you're like, no, you know what? I think Tyreek Hill is going to be the number 1 wide receiver moving forward. You might be able to like tier down from Chase, where you get Tyreek plus a piece. You might be able to improve your team in a couple spots, right, by tiering down for Tyreek Hill, who you can make the argument might outproduce any of these guys on this list just because of what we know he's capable of. But that's it for Tyreek Hill. Moving on now to Tee Higgins. There should probably just be like a hospital image here instead of Tee Higgins. I mean, damn, dude, the man is always injured. But when he is not injured, when he's not in the emergency room, he fucking produces, dude. He gets buckets. In week 3 and 4, when he returns, kind of a little bit of a ramp up time. Only goes 3 for 39 in week 3. Week 4, 10 targets, but only 6 for 60. Then he pops off 9 for 83 and 2 touchdowns against Baltimore. Fucking Jamar Chase also popped off in that game for two touchdowns. Also scored like 36 fantasy points. Just an insane production. And who's on deck? The Baltimore Ravens. But the problem is Tee Higgins hasn't practiced this week. Looks like he might not play this week again against the Ravens. Might be back against the Chargers, but then they go into a bye. So that's why he's kind of a difficult buy low candidate where it's like, all right, you're not going to get him week 10 probably. And then you're not going to get him in week 12 for the bye week. So I think owners right now, if you can maybe sell that to the owner of Tee Higgins, maybe I would only really go after Tee Higgins if you're like in really good shape. You know, if you're like, I don't even know how many weeks we've been in now. If you're 6-3, 7-2, 8-1, obviously 9-0, that's when I'd go for a guy like Tee Higgins, where you can maybe afford to have him stashed on your bench, and afford to tank that bye week. But yeah, man, they're scratching and clawing to make the playoffs. The Bengals are really working hard to make the playoffs, and they're gonna need Tee Higgins back, dude. They're gonna need him, and I think there's even a chance he plays this week if he can just get one practice in, on Wednesday. Then he should be able to play. I mean, maybe it's looking like a long shot, but you never know. That's a matchup that you definitely want pieces of against Baltimore. It's just a divisional must-win game for the Bengals. But anyway, man, yeah, that's the video, dude. Those are my trade targets. Hope you guys liked it. Hope you enjoyed it. If you're still here, I'd really appreciate a like. And if you want to show the most support for the channel, a subscribe is the best way. Also, a good way for you to just catch more of my content, see my stuff when it gets published. Hit that notification bell if you want to catch them as soon as they're published. I usually respond to comments, that come in early, so that's maybe some incentive for you to hit that notification bell. And yeah, man, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.